My name is Mary Murray, and my age is 99 and 5 months. I did not even know he was an original Anzac till after he was dead. He never, ever spoke about the war. We knew nothing about it. Papa, like everything else he did, was a perfectionist. Fred was his chainman from when he left school, and Papa Murray was the best teacher. His surveys were spot on. He would never fudge anything. Everything had to be completely and utterly above board. And then Fred's son, Mark, as soon as he left school, he ended up as a chainman too. And then his son decided to do surveying too. So that's where the 4 generations come in.
Frederick Mark Murray. I'm J.N.'s grandson. The diary really is the only thing that provides knowledge of what he did over there, because he, as my mother said, he never spoke about it.
They were short of rations, and he was most indignant that he had to pay £1 for a tin of condensed milk. That was seen to be his main gripe about the war. He lost his false teeth overboard going overseas and had to get a new set. And although there was deafness in the family, I think it was exacerbated by the guns, and he was very deaf when he came home.
He wasn't the only Queensland surveyor there, right? It's just that those who were surveyors then were there were recognised as surveyors, but no one knew he was a surveyor. See, and then when it was found out that he was, he got those tasks, which I think sort of suited him down to the ground, because it beat being shot at or trying to run at the Turks with a bayonet and measuring lines, and that was sort of more up his alley, you know. It's pretty easy to see, looking at the field notes that he wrote, how he did the survey work that created the map that we produced. As he says in his diary, he used a 20-foot long piece of string and a compass. If you use a 20-foot long piece of string and you fold it enough, you can sort of, you know, it's like calibrating it. And it really didn't matter how accurate it was, as long as you used the same piece of string the whole time. That's what sort of created the accuracy in the map. There may have been a time when they actually did know how long that 20-foot piece of string by putting against the proper tape and then doing a proportional adjustment of the whole thing. Everywhere was dangerous, and when you're walking along all the trenches, I think the only place it wasn't dangerous was when he was doing the tunnels, and there weren't that many of them. Going by his diary, and I think going by any soldier's diary, there wasn't anywhere that was safe unless you were well away from the front. The trenches that he was surveying were very close to the front. Boats were dying. Like he talks about that, guys being shot next to him, and if he had been here yesterday, he would have been blown to bits. And he was probably quite a lot safer than most of the blokes that were sitting there with rifles, because he wouldn't have been doing much with his rifle while he was doing all that work. The hardest thing was reading it, you know, and it's really just a matter of going through the notes, and every line will have a magnetic bearing and a distance. So you just type that in and then type the next one in and just follow on. And then somewhere in the book that'll join on to another part of his survey. So you look for that, because he has these little, might be a double circle or something like that. So you look for another page where it's got a double circle, and that's where it might be an intersection of 2 trenches. You really had to study the field book a lot. You know, distances that were hard to read and bearings that were hard to read. And it was just a slow process, and I just put one of my surveyors on the job of doing it, and he was very good. And then I sent it off to our draftswoman, and then all the other information that we won't put on the plan and she prepares the drawing that you see. That's the process. I think we got it right the majority of the time because everything seemed to join up at the end.
My name's Caitlin, and I got involved in the project as part of University of Queensland's relationship with the State Library of Queensland. And I thought this one was a really great opportunity to do something that looks back in history at World War I to get a bit of an understanding of how people may have felt and operated in that environment. One thing that was really remarkable when doing the research was that although you do see trenches and tunnels in 2D plan, you never get the sense that they're actually standing in a space which is only 2 feet wide for the most part, with maybe a foot wide duck plank or duck board that runs through the middle of the trench. So it was really interesting to get that feel of sitting in this trench and managing to navigate their way through. So I feel like the J.N. Murray record is really important in understanding how people would have moved through that space. Lots of noise, potentially really dark, incredibly difficult and very frightening. The way he recorded that information was sometimes lying down, moving along his stomach, really confined, and still managing to record data that, from what we can see, is quite accurate and quite valuable and valid. It's all relative, I guess, to what maps they've actually taken now, so it's possible that the trenches and the tunnels that they can record with the current surveying techniques may have degraded over time, but it does appear to be quite an accurate survey. One of the maps that we produced was looking at the current topography, which obviously in terms of the overall landscape would be quite similar to what it was back in World War I, the very steep cliffs. So we've overlaid Mark Murray's survey that they did over the top of the original topography, and you can see how it corresponds with the ridgeline. In the data, it's very difficult to interpret the inclinometer readings. Using the trench information was a little bit easier because we could use the existing topography information to overlay that and get a sense of how the trenches may have looked. But the tunnels were a lot more challenging in that we couldn't find very much information about the height of the different tunnels. So I think more research probably needs to be undertaken to understand that.
I don't know, and I haven't seen any other map of Russell's Top or any other map that's been done in the same manner as that, showing the bearings and distances and showing all of the actual information that was picked up. Most of the maps that you see that have been generated from previous wartime engagements are pretty poorly produced because they tend not to be surveyors doing them.
I think there's a really good opportunity to further this particular data into a really good 3D model. Working with different bodies who have access to some of the 3D scans, we could create a really interesting and complete set of the tunnels and trenches that were recorded.
He was just an ordinary man with extraordinary powers.